Our side, it's like somebody judging you on your business. You go, you've not got a fucking clue what's going on in my business.
Yeah.
We didn't have a clue, really.
They've got massive challenges ahead of them as the SNP. And I'm not a political guy, but I can tell you now, this is like a hostile takeover because there's not that much difference between Labour and SNP.
So,
and if I want to squeeze them out, I would just squeeze. And eventually they will crumble. And people will go, the government's not doing anything for me. Maybe I should go with Labour. And then Labour's got, for the first time ever, a uniformed government across.
I would like to know how much it actually costs to run the UK. Just say Scotland as a whole. All of Scotland, down to your disability, down to your schools, your roads, your bins. Like, what is the whole cost?
You know, I don't want to be the CEO of any local authority or local council because I think those guys, they've got to make some really tough decisions. You know, when they've only got a pot of money, and that pot of money's got to last them. So they're either got to deliver holiday programs for kids with special needs, or they got to fix the roads. Okay, you're damned if you don't do. You're damned if you don't. So if they decide no, we're going to just invest in roads, then the community suffers. If they decide just to invest in the community, infrastructure suffers.
It's just a balancing game.
It's difficult.
And then they get enough time to try and fix it. It doesn't necessarily work because it was never going to work. And then they hand the baton to somebody else. And then they've got the same problems. I'm like, you need to take a leaf out of other countries that are actually doing really well and look at it. But I think one of the biggest things is, here we go, corruption. You think when you've got your own business, you're in charge of your pennies and pounds going out. It's only you that makes the stupid decisions if you overexpend or you a bit lavish with your lifestyle. No, that's on you. So what they're doing in the government, I can pretty much
surely
100%. There's a bit of lavishness about that, and people overspending.
You see it with the COVID thing as well, with the companies that were their party donations, they were getting fast tracked to then supply PPE and all that kind of stuff.
Now,
surely that's just capitalism, guys.
I didn't mind that. I don't mind it, right? No. I don't like the fact that they've over-egged it and they've overcharged and somebody's got a backhand. I don't like that. But I do like the fact that they're looking out for their pals and stuff. Because in your business, you want to deal with your pals. You want to do it, and then you want to deal with the people that are building a relationship along the way. I didn't mind that too much. What I don't like is the fact that it's heavily corrupt. And I know some things that's happened in the pharmaceutical industry, and I've got documents on that. And there's the MOD stuff. I know stuff that's happened to MOD, overspending, where they know they could get it a lot more cost effective. And I'm like, it's just brown envelopes back and forward. And it's just sad. It really is sad because they're just looking at their own selfishness. Look at the grand scheme. They've got cousins, aunts, they need to be helped. But they're actually destroying it as well. They're part of it, the destruction. But I feel much better for getting that on the chest.
Thank you for sharing that.
Aye, we could do it.
So we've got Alistair Booth back in today. Welcome, Alistair.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to have you back in.
Cheers. Thank you.
And we've had some big announcements, the government, that we're going to get a little update on.
Aye.
Some hard-hitting questions that Vickers has got ready.
Not necessarily hard-time questions, but I mean, it's always good to have Ali, our resident HR guy, around. I think lots of people are holding off Ali. Lots of people held off on recruitment to see what the government is going to do. I think the shining light for them, or maybe would be that it's only going to happen in autumn 2026, or some stuff in autumn 2026. But what's your take on it? And I would say probably the two biggest risks that I could see from businesses is day one, employment rights. And the second one would probably be if the business allows it, the demand to have flexible working rights, because not every business has got that. So what do we take from what Labour's announced in terms of new changes in Labour?
Yeah, so probably not much has kind of changed, to be fair. I think when Labour got into power in July, the King's Speech was a kind of couple of weeks at the back of that, and they kind of published there was going to be a huge change to employment legislation, which, you know, the way it was kind of portrayed at that point was coming in October. And I think I was kind of one of the few that said it's not all going to happen in October. They have to kind of go through Parliament. What's since kind of happened is that they've kind of presented that, and it's the draft Employment Rights Bill, and it's going to go through consultation with business and in Parliament. And the likelihood is that, you know, if this does come into play, it will be in 2026. So it's not going to be anything that's kind of immediate. And what was published, there's not any kind of great surprise. It's stuff that we kind of knew about kind of before. Yeah, so the key one is what they're looking to do is introduce what they call day one employment rights. So for those that perhaps don't know, at the minute, if an employee is employed in a business, the employer in most cases can have up to 2 years to kind of, potentially dismiss that employee, and they wouldn't run the risk of an employment tribunal unless the individual was dismissed for something that was a breach of the Equality Act. So, race, religion, disability, that type of thing.
Okay.
So that legislation's in place at the minute. What they're proposing to do is to kind of scrap that 2-year qualifying period and bring that in as a day one employment right. So if you sack someone, say with 10 months service, they could run to an employment tribunal without having to tick a box to say that they meet one of these protected characteristics. So that's the risk for business. What was proposed was that was going to be a day one employment right, and it was almost then like, so you couldn't sack someone during a probation period, or you couldn't end during a probation period. So that's not going to be the case. What will still happen is there'll be a probation period that will be allowed to take place, and it will still be fair to dismiss during that probation period.
That's good.
What do you think that probation? What do you think it'll be?
Well, the rumours are that they're talking about a potential 9-month statutory probation period, which is a lot longer than what I expected to be honest. So I don't know if that's maybe what they're kind of putting out there. It might become 6 months perhaps, which even if it's 6 months, I think is quite reasonable. I mean, I think if you can't make a decision on someone's employment during the first 6 months, then that's kind of on you as a manager. Now there'll always be things that might then come up after it. What you can't forecast is if there was a downturn in work, and you maybe needed to make people redundant. What a lot of employers do at the minute is if it's people that have got less than 2 year service, they potentially avoid the need to consult with staff and exit people with a short service to avoid going through a consultation. Now, when this new legislation comes in, you wouldn't be able to do that. If someone's past the probation period, you wouldn't then be able to do that. They would go in that pool with anyone else. Otherwise, they'd be able to kind of raise a claim for unfair dismissal.
Here's a quick question. Sorry, when you go.
It used to be like last in, first out.
That's right. Yeah, back in the day. Yeah.
How does it work legally if a company is struggling?
Yeah.
Especially what's happening just now in the marketplace, and everybody's over their 2 year service.
Yeah.
The business cash flow, everything's really, really, really bad now, really poor. How does someone get round, unfortunately, having to get rid of somebody, even though they don't want to, but to try and protect their business without having to pay them all the redundancy because they don't generally have the money there?
Yeah. So if you couldn't afford to pay the redundancy, then it'd be an insolvency kind of matter. An individual would then be entitled to kind of go through the proper channels to get the money back that way. But that would potentially run your risk of putting you into administration if you've not got that money because they're entitled to be paid a redundancy payment. There's
no easy way around that one. If you don't. So let's just say it's the writing's on the wall, and believe me, the writing's on the wall doesn't happen the Monday when you wake up and you decide it's well in advance. But if you don't do anything about it and you go into insolvency, there is a contribution on your NIC that caters for that an employee can get X amount. It's not full redundancy pay, but it maybe covers the week's wage and stuff like that. But the thing about redundancies, I think when businesses start to struggle, Ali, is it going to be a fair comment that let's just say come 2026, because fortune favors the prepared. 2026, do you see an increase in settlement agreements? If companies are going to have to start moving things around with people, getting rid of people, and is that then creating a culture where we pay to get rid of people? Is that a risk that we need to worry about?
I think that kind of goes on at the minute, to be honest. If you've got people that have got more than that 2 year service and you've identified someone who might be potentially a bad egg in the business or someone who's just not performing and you don't want to go through a lengthy capability kind of process with them, then you'll have a settlement agreement discussion at that point. So a protected conversation is what that's labelled as, and then a settlement agreement. So that kind of happens at the minute. So yeah, you might find there'll be an increase in that come 2026 if the qualifying period is reduced from 2 years. But yeah, difficult to kind of predict that.
I think with this happening, I think you'll be most savvy employers will be looking at different opportunities. Yeah. Maybe even taking people self-employed.
Yeah. I've already heard kind of rumblings off that as well.
So do you think
the big thing for me though is, and this happens at the minute as well, is managers need to deal with issues in a timely manner. So if you've got a performance issue, there's no point in waiting to the probation review to discuss that. If you've seen someone today not doing something you're happy with, there's no point in keeping a note of that and then dealing with that 3 months down the line and addressing it. That ship sailed.
Well, that's
it needs
back
to
to
be
what
addressed at the time.
Can I just ask a quick question though, Ali? Do you think that most managers are equipped to deal with that in the right way?
Probably not, no. I mean, we've even got some of our clients that, know how to do things but still don't do it, and then they'll come to us and it's like, why did you not phone us 2 months ago? Didn't think. It's like,
I think it's what you said in
you're
the
probably not equipped.
Previous episodes, because I was listening to it, and it was the fact that managers don't always do the right thing.
Yeah.
And as a leader,
Yeah.
you need to be very aware of it. And what this is doing, these changes, in a way, it's actually forcing people to target the issues that are actually the ongoing issues in businesses.
Yeah.
Not hiring correctly, and then monitoring and doing it swift.
Aye, and there's different reasons for that depending on the size of the business. So if it's a relatively small business with probably maybe no management structure in place as such, because it's perhaps quite a young business, it's maturing. What you might find is that the business owner is having to do the HR stuff, they're having to do business development, they're still on the tools, they're doing all the finance stuff, everything that goes with that. So managing people is maybe not something that comes naturally to them, and they're not sure how to deal with that. And then think, well, I maybe better keeping Jimmy on a job this week, because if I get rid of Jimmy, I've promised wee Maggie down the road a job next week and I'll have nobody to do it. So sometimes they decide not to act on it and keep that person in the job. And then with bigger organisations, what you find is that the management team have maybe been promoted from within, but they've maybe had no training on how to deal with some of these performance issues. And all they're then seeing is, right, well, my boss is going to give me a hard time if I've not hit my KPI. So if I exit that person this week, I'm going to be down, and I might have to put a business case forward to get a replacement, and I might not get that. So sometimes better the devil you know. So at that level, they maybe don't tackle it either.
Is there any help out there for people learning the basics of management? Do you do that in your business? We
do that in our business. So we do some introduction to kind of line management. So there'll be basic introduction to HR, difficult conversations, managing objectives, managing performance, all that kind of thing. So we do that. There's then professional courses that they could do. So like say Fife College and some of the other colleges offer some things around that as well. Business Gateway is a good wealth of information in terms of they run some webinars and sometimes some workshops, and then you've got Scottish Enterprise as well. They run the Leadership for Growth kind of programme. So there's workshops and courses that are available, but it takes a bit of investment from the organisation to do that. So not just I suppose a financial investment, but a time kind of commitment as well, that the individuals are going to be given the time to attend that and put the learning into practice.
And this is when you're in a smaller business, it's very difficult because you're not time rich.
Yeah, exactly.
You've definitely not got enough money.
And then what you then do is you promote from within, because one of your employees is probably one of your best employees, but maybe not got the people management skills. And all that then happens is they lead the way that they've maybe seen before, and sometimes rightly or wrongly, and that creates tension in the business because the rest of the team are not being managed and led in a way that they want to be led.
I think there's a difficulty when you've promoted within. You've got somebody that's been part of the boys, if you like, or whatever, the group of employees that now took a management role.
Yeah.
And they're just viewed instantly different.
Yeah.
And the pressure's on them now when they see something, because that's one of your mates.
Yeah.
You're going to really do what's right there.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the sort of hierarchy really need to help that individual when they move up in that place.
Exactly. And that needs to be a kind of natural kind of progression. Because I've seen this so often, even before the HR booth was set up when I worked in larger organisations, that was something big companies do as well. So on the Friday you get promoted, start your job on the Monday, but you've not actually been through a leadership programme over the course of the weekend and taught how to do it, and you're just thrown in at the deep end. And what you've then said there, Mike, is exactly what can happen. So it's probably a bit of a kind of succession plan, if you like, looking at a programme and some stepping stones so that there's something put in place to help that individual and the team when that time kind of becomes available. But that doesn't answer all the HR issues. No leader. There's all the other complexities that they need to probably know where to go to for that information and where to get that kind of support. But the basics for them as a manager is leading, motivating, and inspiring their team, and how do they do that, but also tackling any issues in a timely manner and properly and professionally.
Do you think that the pool that companies have to recruit from, the skill pool, is going to grow or is it going to shrink? It's like speculating. I know I'm asking you to play darts in the dark. But what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, so it's probably it has kind of shrunk a little bit or significantly since COVID and COVID and Brexit, I suppose. So there's less people in the UK working population, and as a result of that, some of that is because of Brexit. There was then other factors with people decided to leave employment and maybe go and do something else during COVID because the fed up of the rat race or whatever. And then younger people have maybe stayed in further education longer rather than entering the employment market because perhaps opportunities weren't there when they were due to leave school or come out of college or university and have stayed in that longer. So that pool is a little bit smaller than it's been in previous years. But there is certainly younger people looking to get into the jobs market, and I think that's where employers have got a bit of an opportunity there to engage and inspire with them a little bit to basically get that next crop of talent to come into the workforce.
Talk to us a little bit about, because I know that you're very proactive in bringing people into the workforce. What can employers start doing to cultivate that young talent, to bring them through, to get them ingrained?
Yeah, well, Johnny does a bit of this at the minute. So he's engaging with your local school potentially. So the school are always looking for employers in terms of mentors, role models, employers to come in and just talk about the opportunities that are available. So that could just be a talk on business. It could be a talk on what employers are looking for in terms of people coming into the workplace, and just a kind of chat around that. So yeah, all the local schools are looking for that. So that's a starting point. If you want to be a little bit more proactive, engage with developing young workforce. So you DIW, that's a kind of regional, right across Scotland. So there's DIW coordinators, and then that's maybe then talking about potentially going into schools and doing some workshops. So that could be helping them prepare their CV, talk to them about getting prepared for an interview. Talk to them about the sort of things that will be asked at an interview, and really preparing them in that respect. And then the third part of that is potentially then offering attending their career fairs. So a lot of the schools will have their own kind of careers fairs, and that's an opportunity for employers to go in and talk about the opportunities that you have. So the careers fair allows you to speak to the teachers, the pupils, but also the parents. Sometimes the parents don't really know the opportunities that are there, so you get the opportunity to speak to the parents on that evening as well, and talk about the opportunities that your business can kind of offer. And what I've seen locally is employers that have done that are certainly getting the next crop of youngsters that are coming through because of taking the time to go in and do the careers fair.
So you've used the enterprise for some of your staff, because I remember you saying in the past you've got somebody
apprenticeships. Apprenticeships. So my very first employee, Emma. So it was way back in 2015. I was at that point where needed to bring someone in. Like anything, you're managing kind of cash flow and cost and what have you, and it's kind of it's a big step. So I decided at that point to bring in a modern apprentice, and the reason I went down that route was at that point Fife Council were going to subsidise the wages for the first 6 months. So it was 50% of Emma's costs would be provided, so that helped me manage my costs, and it allowed me at that point as well then to see how well Emma would do. And essentially, she could then pay for herself through the training and support that I could kind of give. So that worked for us. Emma stayed with the business, completed her apprenticeship, stayed with the business for, I think it was four and a half years after that. She's went on, and she's now, I think, the people services manager for OVO Energy, and done great. So that was my first experience as an employer, using the modern apprenticeship kind of framework, and Emma went and did her SVQ qualification, so did that in business admin, and then we as a business, I think a couple of years later, funded for her to go through the CIPD qualification to give her that experience. So that was my first experience of that, and then that allowed me to perhaps be an advocate of that and speak to some of our clients to do the same thing. And we've done that a couple of times since. So most recently was Rennie. So that was a digital marketing apprenticeship that he completed. So he joined us last year, and he's completed the apprenticeship in less than a year. So 10 months, I think he's done it in, and we've offered him a permanent position, which started at the end of September there. So he's
that's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
that is absolutely brilliant. And you see, for any of these listeners, viewers out there, the youngsters, where would you guide them? They're at school just now, not know what they want to do. But they know they want to make some money, they want to make a go of it. What kind of advice would you give to them?
Yeah, so definitely speak to there'll be a careers advisor in the school. or a DYW coordinator in the school. So speak to them. They'll know what other opportunities are out there. Because again, I think there's still a perception that they have to go into further education to be seen as a positive destination, and that's not the case. There's loads of apprenticeship opportunities, whether it's modern apprenticeships, there's foundation apprenticeships, and then you could do graduate apprenticeships as well in Scotland. So there's loads of things like that available. So I think it's engaging with our contacting the school to understand where the opportunities are, because a lot of youngsters just want to earn money, and you know, earn whilst you kind of learn, sort of thing. So speaking to the schools around that, and I think the schools are recognising that there's more different kind of paths, if you like, to achieve that positive destination rather than having to go to further education.
Yeah, and I mean now for all of you, I mean, does anybody know the stats, the percentage? Because you're saying maybe kids are now going into further education, or there's a demise of the education system. Is that because
I can get some stats I'm happy to kind of share on some of that, which you could put on the show notes potentially, so I can get something on that.
Yeah.
But I think, I'm sure I heard this recently, I think last year was the highest level of modern apprenticeships that Fife had, certainly for Fife, for a number of years. So that I'd certainly heard that last year.
And is there any rumbles in the budget for education for youngsters coming through the trades, the financial services industry?
Yeah.
What I'm trying to allude to is the fact that there's youngsters coming through, and as we've chatted before, it's quite hard to take on a youngster without that 50% help in hand because of the minimum wage.
Yeah.
Was that £11.41 or something now? 44. So it's quite difficult when you've got someone that's been in the business for 5-6 years, maybe on £12 something, and just fresh meat, as I would call it, coming through at 11. Now, it's not their fault, but it is the government's. So is there any way, or have you heard of any advice or any companies delivering help for new businesses, or businesses like myself or Mike's, Vicky's, even yourself? It's just sitting there just now ready to be pounced on.
So I think the biggest problem, certainly for trade apprenticeships, and it's not even so much around the funding towards the wages, is the fact that there's, and I've picked this up from a few trades and construction kind of clients, is that in education, there's a waiting list to actually do the courses. So for you doing a trade apprenticeship, it's a 4-year apprenticeship, and it's a mixture of kind of the practical stuff on the job, but then going to college, and the colleges just don't have the capacity to deal with it, and there doesn't seem to be any joined up kind of thinking around, right, if we're looking at, say, 50 electricians coming in, what do we need to do at college to support the funding around that and the courses? That's where it seems to be a bit of a disconnect. So
no cohesion in
absolutely,
I don't think there's a strategy. I don't think there's a strategy around looking at that, because if you look at gas engineers, one of the big things about gas engineers is obviously safety, when they have to train you in terms of safety. So there is very few colleges that can do that safely. So what you're saying absolutely makes sense. We will have to wait till what the Chancellor says, but there's not that much funding available in terms of helping younger people get onto the ladder, assisting businesses. It becomes a lot more difficult. I think money is tight at the moment.
This is ridiculous, right? So this is I'm getting my wee 5-minute moment here, right? When you have a business, or you have the country, and you think, we need to have, the hamster wheel, everybody coming through the conveyor belt, they can find money. They find money for everything. When they find money for war, it's because they're getting a deal and they're getting something at the back end of it. What you're getting at the back end of youngsters in our society is helping them, encourage them for future generation. Now we've had Brexit, that is what it is. You've got all the crisis that's happening, it is what it is. But where are we at in helping ourselves in the next 5 years, 10 years? Because they already knew this was happening 5-10 years ago. So you could go down the rabbit hole saying, so why? What I'd be really interested in finding, they can find £1 billion, whatever it may be, to open up the shipyards, open up fabrication, open up the trades, the colleges. I know you got a 31 week slot for, I think it's joiners, and we had this, and unfortunately, and this is the reality of it, not to be a negative spin on it, we had lecturers not being able to attend the college, and then the kids not having a lecturer there. There was no crisis management.
That's what we've had as well.
And it's a shit storm. Right? So that's the problem. I know the demise of the college and the funding's getting pulled. I think there's about 15 million being pulled. So you're thinking, right, what are they doing here? Are they trying to create independent companies to do independent training and basically quash the college? And then get independent people for the SVQs. Is it SVQs?
SVQs, yeah, Scottish Vocational
So, I mean, this is where my wee brain's rattling about. Why? There's always a reason why that. It doesn't happen overnight. There's definitely something happening here to destroy this whole
ecosystem.
There's got to be. And I think it's when, if you're being open and honest, there's a lot of great things. There's a lot of great people that are doing the right thing, and it's brilliant. But why is the big establishment crumbling? Why is it? I mean, what's your thoughts on it? And this is not me being a conspiracy theorist. I'm just looking at the data and just going, this is a bit fucked. Why is that allowed to happen?
I think there's a lot of factors you need to consider around that. It's the pot of money. Is it being distributed correctly? I don't know. Only the guys at the top knows how you spend the money. But what is evident is it's not being spent in the right areas. Because I said to you earlier on, I think local authorities only get a pot of money. And that pot of money is shrinking. But their commitments are growing. You think about things like housing, okay, just social housing. When somebody becomes destitute, and I know Edinburgh suffers with this, they can put you up in a hotel, okay, and you can stay in that hotel. And there is a hotel near the airport that's just its sole purpose is that. But you're not guaranteed a room. So you have to pack up all your stuff, go out to work the next day, and hopefully when you get back, your room is still there. So there's lots of socioeconomic pressures that we might be aware, we might not be aware of, that sits on government, but the pot is getting smaller. And is that a question about taxation? Who knows?
I understand what you're saying, but you would have to be you'd have to be blind to see what's in front of you. Like, you could go into businesses as you do, and I think probably within the first 15 seconds, you'll already identify issues because you've seen it, you've heard it, you can study the mannerisms and how people are acting, you can see it. You'll see it in businesses when you're taking on the HR role, you go, I know this is coming because you just feel it, you see it. It's the same idea in the government. And I'm not worldly wise, but I know there's issues.
They're very siloed. They don't all work together. They're very siloed. So you would think about this, and this is probably the best way to describe it, is you apply for something. You apply for something and you fill in the application. And then what you think happens in your mind is it goes into an envelope, it goes up to the 4th floor, and then it goes down to the 3rd floor, and it gets passed on to somebody else. In reality, the two people are sitting right next to one, and all he needs to do is pass it from one to the other. So there's a lot of those types of things happening. Governments operate in silos. There's a reason for it, because it's good segregation of duties. But we've come to the time where that segregation of duties, it's not great because it's efficiencies. We're not efficient. There is too much, and the people it's like, think about big corporations. When they make redundancies, okay, they make redundancies right at the top. Or they don't make it right at the top, they make it right at the bottom. That's not where the money sits. The money sits right at the top. Streamline your organizational structure, streamline your management team. People at the bottom don't make a difference. People at the top make a difference. We need to start thinking, government needs to run this like a business. Pros and cons. If we're not making money here, what do we do? But it's easy to say. It's easy to sit on the outside looking in because we don't understand what the pressures are.
Yeah, I think it's just a frustration for businesses because you're trying to kind of create job opportunities. You want to do the right thing by creating apprenticeships. Then you're held back either by red tape because there's lack of funding towards the wage costs, but more importantly, there's perhaps the lack of spaces available to do the college course, so they can't get the qualification and the training they need to become a fully qualified tradesperson.
I wanted to ask you. Remote working is going to become a right.
Yeah,
if your business
flexible
working. Okay, so it's going to become a right. So not necessarily if you're a trade business, look, that'll never work.
Yeah.
What do you think employers' attitudes are towards that flexible working? Do you think they worry about things like productivity? Because if you're sitting in an office environment, you'll make yourself 3 cups of coffee. When you're sitting at home, you make yourself 13 cups of coffee.
Yeah.
Do you think that employers worry about that? And do you think it could be a factor that worries them when they start looking at people?
I think so. I mean, I think it's already a kind of factor at the minute. We know through some of the clients that we work with that some businesses had kind of become a bit more flexible during the pandemic, coming out of that and offering a bit more flexibility. Others have kind of decided, no, we want people in the workplace. And I think what we've kind of seen with some of them is that they've probably done a little bit better in terms of productivity because of that. Not in all cases. And then what we have found is the ones that offered a little bit more flexibility, though, have been able to, if they're growing and trying to recruit people, they've probably got a better choice of candidates because they're offering flexibility, whereas candidates are expecting that. So we've got a couple of bigger clients at the minute who don't really offer much flexibility, and they're struggling to fill some of the key roles in the business. And the reason being is they're not offering any flexibility. That's what the candidates are kind of after. So it's a kind of a mixed bag. But I think my experience with that is if people are going to, make 13 cups of coffee and not be productive, they're probably going to do that in the workplace. Yeah. Or do it at home. It highlights it a little bit more.
The thing is, so take this again, change. There's always, what it equals is pros and cons. Flexibility.
Yeah.
Right. People got lonely. It's a higher rate of depression, anxieties. Okay. That social interaction. People can't even string a conversation together. However, people started getting a dog. So the dogs went out there, and then there's a dog food. There's all that, and then vets. So, I'm talking about coffee. Dog walkers, exactly.
I mean, that's a business that's sprung up in the last 40 years. Yeah.
People are buying more coffee now. So, there's always a pro and a con, but I think what you have to look at sometimes in these changes, what's the biggest con of it all? And then you've got the mental health. And that's how you've got a string of like I think them Andy's Man Club and all these other variations, help and charity works. So we'll really have to look at it. The changes are happening, good and bad, but let's just make sure we soften the bad as much as we possibly can.
And
I think there's always change.
Exactly. And I think, where companies have went fully remote, the challenge is there is that individuals, perhaps in terms of knowledge sharing and collaboration, it's difficult to learn that quicker because you are so remote. And then you touched on there, Johnny, about the social side of things, but interpersonal skills, a lot of us learned our life experience and life skills in the workplace, learning from others. A lot of relationships that you've kind of formed over the years have been, your friends, partners, etc. you've met at work. But if you're kind of stuck at home looking at a screen, probably not going to learn that as much.
That's when Tinder took off.
Well, what about things like ethos and values and that whole company culture that you're trying to create? If you've got, if you just got fully remote, what are you seeing? Is it, do people still have that same ethos and values? Because you're looking at somebody over the screen, you're not shaking his hand, you're not looking into the white of his eyes, you don't get to understand his little quirks because you can turn off your camera, that type of thing.
I think a lot of what you do there is try to measure it on output. So what's that individual bringing to the business? So measuring the output around that. So does it matter if they've made 10, 13 cups of coffee, but their output's been good? They're maybe not being logged on for 7.5 hours a day, but they've met the KPIs, they've exceeded that. So if that lives up to your values, then fine. I think that kind of works. The minute that they're not meeting that is when you have to then kind of face into that.
That is an individual thing, I think, as well. Like some people will be really good at working from home, and others will be distracted by everything that goes on.
Exactly.
Whereas they'd be more productive in an office environment because they're there working. So that's a challenge. Ours was like the continuity. We just lost a lot of continuity when it was through COVID. So ours definitely worked better when we're in the office. Just taking phone calls, something happening, you're there instantly working on that. Whereas it was just spread when they were working from home.
I remember when I started my career, I was at Babcock at the Science Dockyard, and it was a massive open plan personnel office, and it was kind of split in two. You had the personnel department on one side with a row of filing cabinets, which was everybody's personnel files down the middle. But the other side was what was called the industrial relations team. So they're dealing with the trade unions, the managers, all the disputes. And, I'd put something on the system, then I'd have to go and file it. But all I could hear was conversations all over the place. And if I'm working at home on a Teams call, you're not picking up any of that. So that's the opportunity, I think, that can sometimes be missed. So it's trying to find a balance with that.
How good organizations at measuring output? Because I agree with you. I don't really subscribe that if you come to work at 8 and you leave at 5, you're going to be productive. I don't subscribe to that. I believe that it's in your output. So I believe what gets measured gets done. How good are organizations at putting those measurements in play to measure that? Is it more on the larger scale, a smaller one, or doesn't it really matter? What do you see?
I think certainly see bigger organisations do it because they measure it. They've maybe got commitments to shareholders and things like that. So a lot of the KPIs are set in stone, and that's what they do. But I think a lot of smaller businesses get that now as well in terms of what you've said there. What measures gets done. I think a lot of them are putting kind of foundations in place to do that and looking at how their people perform as kind of part of that. So I think it is certainly something more businesses are.
I think that it's highlighted because when you're forced to do something, you go, I don't like this.
Yeah.
How am I going to know that, Stacey or Robert's working?
Yeah.
People think, I need to figure this out.
Yeah.
And then the conversations between business owners starts happening more about the changes.
Yeah.
I mean, I disagree with it all. I don't like it.
The flexible working side
I don't like it at all. And I think the reason why I don't like it, because I'm a big ambassador for mental health, and I think when you're on your own, it becomes lonely and you get too caught in your thoughts. And when you're a bit frustrated with a line manager or anything, you've got nothing to vent out. You can't even walk away to the bathroom and talk to your other...
You speak to the mirror.
Oh, you're gorgeous. You're stunning. But no, I think collaborations and people need to be around people. Don't get me wrong, there's some introverts that like to be on their own and that. And as Mike said, it works for some people, but it's an organisation. I disagree with that.
There's two separate things. You've got one is flexible working and one's remote working. So flexible working isn't necessarily remote working.
Yeah.
So flexible working could be that it might be one day you're working at home and the rest of the time in the workplace, or it could be there's a slight change to your working hours, and that might be because you've got a dog, you need to do dog walking, or you've got a child you need to take to school or nursery, or you've got an elderly kind of relative that you kind of look after. So there might be a slight adjustment to the working hours. And I think if you offer that, and that's something that individual needs, I think you'll find they'll be more productive because they know that they've kind of got a good relationship with their boss, but they've also got the hours that kind of suit their personal circumstances. And if they've got that, the likelihood of them going anywhere else is pretty slim. But also, whilst they're with you, they're going to work a lot harder to maintain that because they know that if they don't do what's needed of them, there's going to be a conversation to be had, and they might lose that flexibility. So I think you'll find people are more productive if they've got that. But it's two separate things: flexible working and remote working. So sometimes there is a bit of an overlap, and it does go hand in hand. But
it is frustrating for me because you have to realise that no everybody's like you, and you've got to be so accommodating with everybody. But the underlying, it's not to say I'm a bad boss. I don't think I am anyway.
Pause. Long pause.
But I feel sometimes, not with everybody, but there's a higher level of people that have just not got that drive. And I'm not saying that they all have to be entrepreneurs, not by a stretch of imagination at all, but there's just that lack of grit. I feel that, and it's all great. Everybody wants to get the best of the working conditions. I understand that. Get the best work conditions you possibly can. But I think there's a point where they're losing sight of reality. Like, no, I want that, I want this, and I want that. I went, what are you actually talking about?
Could I make a controversial statement? And you know me, I avoid controversy as far as possible. But do you think that attitudes have changed? Where, business owners give the opportunity, you come to work, and we will reward you if you perform. Whereas now we want the reward before we perform. So previously it was performance and reward. Now it's reward and performance. Are you seeing any of that, or is that just in my head?
There's a little bit of that, I think. Yeah, I think some people want a 4-day working week. They want, perhaps to work less hours, better employee benefits and kind of conditions. So there's a bit of that. Yeah.
Do you think leave? How big a part does leave play in people's decisions to move in companies? Because I don't think it's all about money.
Yeah.
Do you think that if I increased leave days to 34, 35 days leave, I would attract a better kind of caliber candidate? Or is it individually dependent, what the individual wants?
Individual, I think. If you've got a lot of it will be around potentially career progression. What's the culture of the organisation? That you spoke about values earlier, stuff like that. People want a lot of that. So, if you've got a bad manager, but give 40 days, they're still not going to stay because they've got a bad manager.
Okay.
Good annual leave will definitely kind of help because it gives you more time with family and more time to do your hobbies and interests and that kind of thing. So if you're just doing the standard 28 days and got a company down the road offering 35 days on the same pay, the likelihood is they're going to go there.
Right. What do you think good employers are doing to attract good caliber candidates? What is a good business doing to attract those guys that give you longevity and good output?
Yep. So touching on kind of good cultures, because what you'll find is that your existing employees will be the advocates of your business, and they'll be recommending you to their friends and family. So you actually don't have to do an awful lot to attract talent because your team are doing that for you. They can be doing that on social media, but they can be doing it just in the business, being advocates for your business. So it's creating a good culture, and that will vary from business to business. So what might be a good culture in business might look different elsewhere. I think a lot of people do like the social kind of interaction, so that might be doing team building days. It might be going out and doing something in your local area that adds value. So whether it's a beach clean, helping a old folks home, or something that kind of fits with your kind of core values, that is something that people want. They want to be part of something, and I can create a purpose and things like that around it. So if you've got that in place, good leadership, opportunity for kind of career progression, that's what people are kind of looking for. And if you're doing all that, your employees will be advocates of your business for you anyway.
Ellie, how important is money to people looking for jobs? But both sides of the coin. How important is it for employers to pay more, and how important is it for people to look for more money? Is that do people leave for more money?
Not always. I mean, you sometimes find that I've seen this before, where people have kind of they maybe say to their boss, I'm leaving because I've got offered more money elsewhere. What will then happen is the employer will make a counter offer, and the individual will stay. But the reasons that person was leaving wasn't for money. A few months down the line, they're going to move on anyway.
We've had that.
You're just parking it. So the money is not the.
So money is not the driver.
Not the main driver. So they might think it is, and you make a counter offer and they stay, but they're not going to. A few months down the line, they're going to move on regardless.
I had a chat with somebody, named nameless, last week. He's got a big organisation, and one of the guys came up to one of his managers, like, just to give you a heads up, I've been offered another job and made money. He went, bro, fuck off.
Just like that.
But he's like, aye, not interested. And he just got him a new car. He got him all this. He went, I'll find somebody. And I was like, how did you get like that? Because normally at the very initial, you're worried about people leaving. He went, fuck them. Excuse my French, but that's just how he said it. He went, no, I'm not being the mercy of anybody. I says, it's difficult to get employees. It's extremely difficult to get the right ones as well. But I'm not going to help the ransom of that. If it's money, no bothered. If he came to me and said, look, I'm looking to take on more responsibility because I've got a growing family, I'm looking to do this and I'm looking to do that. Is there any opportunities that are there? And it's the way, I could be wrong and articulating myself in the wrong way sometimes, but it's how you present it to people. Because already that's told him he's went elsewhere because there's something wrong. He's got, and that's what his brain is. He went, no interested. I'm flogging a dead horse. Get on away. No interested. And it's the hard reality for being a business owner. You could have these hard conversations, like you said earlier on. Target them, hit them, get rid of them. Not the people, but get rid of these uncomfortable conversations very quickly by having them. It's just really interesting because you feel like when an employee's giving you something like that, you go, I better offer them a little bit more. As you say, 2 months down the line, they're away. So I think even for the podcast now, this is hopefully going to help people and string a chord for them.
And money is a factor, of cost of living crisis. We've obviously got the budget that's coming, which is going to impact on business, but it's probably going to impact on employees as well. So, in terms of the money side of things, it's important to potentially have a look to see what other employers are paying, so that you are maybe giving pay rises, benchmarking, looking at that, so that, because I've seen this before as well, that, somebody puts a notice in and says, I'm leaving, I've got more money. It's like, oh, your best employee, you'll match it. It's like, well, why did you not match it? Why have you not given them an increase over the last 3 or 4 years anyway? So just being aware of that. So
I think it works the other way as well, because we've had one or two in the past who have come saying, like, I'm leaving because I've got another job for more money, but they haven't come and spoken to you to say, look, is there any chance of a rise? So they're not. To me, it's not just all about the money for them. It's whatever they're doing. It's not for them. They're looking for other opportunities.
But here we go, and we need to look at it from their point of view. They're concerned about how to say it because they're maybe worried about saying it. So maybe, you're right. It comes from the leader. Well, it should be actually every month saying, look, just having an open conversation. I know everybody wants more money. I am trying my best, even if I can increase it by 20 pence. I am trying my best, but is there any show of hands? Anybody wants something different than money? Do they want extra fuel or a fuel card or an extra half a day on a Friday? And get them to put their opinions in, their thoughts on it, to share it.
Even having a structured kind of, it might be an annual pay review. It's not a pay right, it's a pay review. So maybe you say that your financial year is whatever it is, or calendar year, and you're going to review salaries at that point, and you let people kind of know at that point what increase, if any, they're going to get, and explain the reasons why. So at least they maybe know, right, I'm not putting my notice in because my pay review is going to be the 1st of July, so I'll wait and see what they offer me at that point.
And that'll also signify the connection you've got with your team as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, you go.
So I think reward and recognition plays a big part in organizations. Okay, and especially the larger the organization, of course, much easier it is because they've got deep pockets, so they can afford to give 10, 20% increases. Yeah. But what I have seen is that organizations where they reward and they recognize people that go above and beyond, those people retain for a lot longer. And it's not necessarily monetary. It's maybe saying we're only working half day Friday, or you're getting 3 days extra days worth of leave. That reward and recognition, what you say is so important, is having good pay reviews. But for employees to have key outcomes, I think that is so important that when you start your job, that you have key performance indicators, or when you do a performance review to say, these are my expectations. This is expectations are 1, 2, 3, and this is how I measure it. So employee immediately knows what good enough looks like. There's no ambiguity. But then, very often, how often do employees employ somebody and they have what the first 30, 60, 90 days needs to look like?
Yeah.
Very often in small businesses, that's not there.
Doesn't happen.
So you throw them into the deep end. They are finding their feet as much as you are. And it sits in your head. You should know that. Well, guess what? They don't.
Yeah.
It's hard bringing that first employee on. I mean, you spoke about Emma. That must have been hard.
Yeah.
Because it's managing your cash flow.
Yeah.
Because you have to take less money.
Yeah.
As the business owner, you have to make sacrifices.
Yeah.
So staff is the lifeblood of a business. I do believe that if you find the right people, you do want to reward them, you want to recognize them, you want to retain them. But inevitably, as your business grows, there are some people that become a cancer in your business, and you need to release them, and that's the difficult part. I think it's always the easy decision is just we go with what we we go with. Hard decision is we know that this is wrong. What do we do about it? Do we suffer short-term pain for long-term gain? Yeah. Often you're scared to make that decision, and you should be.
Do you think there'll be, like with the changes coming in, there'll be a mass exodus of people just getting sacked before employees?
A little bit of that, I think, potentially. Yeah.
So here's a deep philosophical question. You ready for yourself, Selfless? Why do you do it? Why do you do what you do?
Why I do what I do?
I know you said about when you in the corporations you worked in before, and now you left and you did all that. You worked for your shed and then all that. Why do you do what you're doing?
I enjoy what I do, and the reason I kind of do it is I like seeing what we do for the SME business community across the country. I think I get inspired by a lot of the businesses we work with. I think some of the businesses, that we deal with in terms of, I love their story. I love what they're doing in terms of kind of creating jobs and opportunities. And I just get a buzz out of that. But also get a buzz out kind of seeing my own team kind of growing and the development that they've had over the years. So that's kind of what kind of gets me going, is kind of all of that really is just the clients that we work with and not knowing where that next bit of business might come from. Some of the businesses work with companies I'd never heard of, and it's like it's just amazing. It might be an introduction from someone, it might be a website inquiry, or somebody's heard about us and they get in touch, and then we look at their business and how we can help them with that journey as well. I just love all that, and then just love the team that we've got, and seeing their development and the work that they put in. I love seeing the kind of growth and development of them as well.
There you go, that's a great answer, you can see it in your, see how you just started talking there. The shoulders went back there, the energy, you're smiling, and you're like, that's what no scoring you on that. I just love it when people start answering that. It's great.
But it's generally too, you do make a positive difference in the workplace for employers and employees. It's not just a one-sided. I think it's very hard in your job because employers want you to always be on their side, and often they're not right. And you have to have those difficult conversations. But it is testimony to the great team and the culture that you've built at the HR booth to see that. So well done. Again, it's a phenomenal job that you've done. And I think one of the things where you definitely want to get in touch with Ali and his team is because whatever they tell you to do, you love. You've gone through all those heartaches. You've had those things where you've had to have difficult conversations. You've had to train your staff. You've done all those things. So you're not preaching from a book. You're not regurgitating book knowledge. You're actually doing it in your own business. You're living those things. You're promoting, you're showing, you're doing all those things. And that gives you a lot more confidence when I'm looking. And I do think, we all think we can do HR through Business Gateway or go to ACAS and download an employment contract or a staff handbook. But I do think that specifically in the people space, you need an expert like yourselves to talk to. There is just no two ways about it in my mind.
So if people need to speak to you, they can DM
how do we get in touch?
So to the website, so the www.thehrbooth.co.uk, or they can email info@thehrbooth.co.uk. That's probably the best places to find us. And I'm active on LinkedIn, and then the business is active on all the usual social media kind of channels. But the website or the email address is probably the best way.
No, that's perfect. Well, one of the other things I wanted to chat about, just finishing up as well, if anybody is out there listening to us, hopefully there's more than one or two. Mum, thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Mom, Dad.
DM us. If there's any content that you're wanting to hear, something you're going through just now, put it in the chat, DM us, and we'll discuss it. Again, this whole station, this podcast is all about helping you, motivating you, and just letting you know that you're not alone. We've all walked that path, and we still are, continue to walk that path, and this is what we're creating this for, to help. So, what would we finish on?
We'll finish on, this is your world, shape it or someone else will.
Love it.